Today I have a bunch of graffiti shirts for us. We're gonna have some fun with them. I got nothing fun to say for everybody other than let's do it. Let me start with the first one first, actually. Nice, easy way to get back into the day. Hope everyone's having a good time. Fun evening. Birthday girl. A lot more graffiti and bubble letters to do today. So, if that's your thing, then we'll do it. I do have the comments up so I can see everybody, but they're over there on the computer. So I'm gonna keep walking back over there when there's an opportune time and read what everyone has to say, answer some questions. I'm not gonna see every little comment, but I'll try to answer those questions as best I can. Let's throw a drop shadow in here first. I didn't do any painting yesterday. I spent all day on YouTube, like fixing titles, changing thumbnails, doing some research, trying to make that work. Let's add some purple to this real quick. I'm gonna do one of these more fun graffiti designs. I'm using the Badger Omni 3000 airbrush today, painting with Createx paints and painting at about 50 psi. I know those questions will come, so there's the answer to those. Bum, bum, bum. I'm gonna add some pink too. All right. Where am I based out of? I live in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Been here for a while now. Let's do this graffiti design. It's loyalty is royalty. Okay. Let's do it. Let's lay it out. I want to make sure that I'm centered, that I'm symmetrical, and that all the strokes of my letters have plenty of room to do their thing. I don't like that. I gotta throw is in there. That'll work. I think that'll do it. Okay. Coming with my black outlines. hope that air compressor isn't too loud. It seems like it's getting louder to me. Kind of got weird with that T. Alright. Let's add some line weight to the bottom of these letters. Not necessarily a shadow. Kind of, but it doesn't follow all the same rules as a shadow would, so it's not really a shadow as much as just line weight. I've been getting a lot of people asking if I'm squeezing the bottle with my right hand. I'm not squeezing the bottle, I'm just using it as a handle. If I have a gravity-fed airbrush, you'd be holding your hand up here like this. But since I have this nice bottle right here, I just use this as a big handle, like a foregrip, if you will. Alright, that's fine. Let's fill this in with some color. Let me see if there's something like that. I don't know. I've told the story many times if you've been here before. I started out at a theme park. I was working at Kings Dominion in Richmond, and it was a seasonal job, so when that season ended, I started an online store. Actually, I started a shop in the mall first, and then went to an online store, and I've been painting ever since, just from online orders. The first couple of years, I had some great teachers and guidance. They taught me all the techniques and tricks and how to improve. But for the last 10 years or so, I've been pretty much by myself, and there's been upsides and downsides to that. The upside is I get to develop my own style, and the downside is it took me a long time to do that because I didn't have any influence. Add some lime blue. You'll notice I'm pulling back this truck back here instead of pulling the trigger back. I'm just pushing air down here. And that's because pulling this back will pull the needle back further than this trigger will allow you to, which opens the tip of the airbrush up more and allows more paint flow to come through. So when you're doing fills, you can just pull this back and get a stronger paint flow more quickly, as long as you can control it. Got a cute little crown up here. I'm going to add a little bit of purple to the bottom just to give it some depth, and then some white highlights, which makes everything stand out. And then we'll move on to the next one. And of course some drips, because always drips. I'm gonna bring this up a little bit more. I made this design too big. It should have been much smaller, and making it big makes it take a lot longer to paint, of course, but it also, when it sits on your shirt, on your chest, being too big, it wraps around your chest a little bit, and it becomes hard to read. So I shouldn't have made it as big as I did. You need mods to kick me out? Yeah, I do. How did I get started airbrushing? I kind of explained that. I think that's what I answered earlier, was at the theme park. I had no experience with airbrushing when I started out. There was no lettering experience in my... I couldn't write a cursive alphabet. I had no graffiti styles in my head. I was a technical artist. I wanted to be an architect. So I knew how to draw lines and build shapes and things like that, and that's what translates into graffiti. But I had no lettering skill when I started out. That all came from practice and watching other people and whatnot. The reason I say that is because if you find yourself looking at this going, man, that looks cool, I could never do that. You're right about it looking cool, but you're wrong, because you can do that. I'm the best use case of that. I had no skill when I started this. I was not some prodigy. It just took a lot of time and practice and effort. And if you want to do something like this, you absolutely can. And I'd be happy to help you get to that point. I'm working on tutorials and things. I released a tutorial the other day about painting on black shirts. I know that's not what you start out with. That's not where I'm starting with these tutorials. It's just what I had already recorded. To be honest with you, I'm a little nervous to release like the main how to airbrush tutorial, because I change things so often as far as how I make videos that I don't want to make like 15 different versions of the same tutorial, you know? But I know that I can improve if I continue to wait a little bit longer and do that better. But in the meantime, you can learn by watching, and you can always ask me questions. And I can give you drills and advice on how to improve skills and get moving. Yeah. This one we're doing World's Best Wife. Only wife is going to be in graffiti. I'm going to make that word a little bit smaller than I did last time, like I said. Just spacing out my letters with the white there. And then I'm going to dive straight into the outlines. Kind of going for more square letters on this one. And I'm going to use a drop shadow to center it. It's pretty much right in the middle, but I'm going to put this drop shadow on the left side instead of underneath the letters. It's still underneath, but mostly on the left side. And that's going to help balance out the design, center it onto the shirt. You can do the same thing with your script lettering. If you notice that your script is a little off center, add your drop shadow appropriately to center that design. And World's Best in script on top. And again, drop shadow on the left side because the design was a little bit towards the right of the shirt. And I'm going to come back with the colors. See if I got it. Any questions? Got no questions. Pink to yellow to green with some pink hearts on the outside. Again, I'm pulling back this chuck. It's called the chuck nut to get a faster fill. And I'm going to do a solid pink outline. Something else I wanted to talk about is YouTube is introducing, in the near-ish future, a new feature, basically TikTok. YouTube is essentially adding TikTok to their repertoire of content. And what that means for me, these are less than a minute long, up to a minute long videos that are shot in vertical format, that will be in the same ecosystem as the rest of YouTube's videos and content, which means I need to make some of those, which means I'm going to be posting a lot more often, but a lot less production quality videos. I'm not going to take away from what I'm doing here. It's not going to take away from the curated how to airbrush videos and tutorials, but in addition to those things, I'll be posting essentially the same content that's on TikTok and Instagram here on YouTube as well. I don't want that to come as a surprise to anybody. And the point of that content isn't necessarily for those that are learning how to airbrush as much as it is for the rest of the world who likes to watch satisfying videos. For them, it's discoverability for me and for other channels. You know how fast stuff blows up on TikTok. YouTube wants to bring that to their channel, and I want to make use of that. So I was invited into YouTube's little seminar yesterday. They wanted to announce that to some of the content creators and tell me about it and get me prepped for it. They're working on building the tools. Hi, bud. Okay. Okay. YouTube is making some of the tools like TikTok is, like their video editor. That was my son. Those tools aren't out yet, but you can still upload those videos. So I'm going to be uploading those videos and tagging them appropriately. If you don't want to see them, ignore them. If you do want to see them, then congratulations. Ethan and Kevin, just a script design. Ethan and Kevin. E-T-H-A-N. That little dude in there is why I do all of this. K-E-V-I-N. And this design is a little bit to the left. I'm going to put my drop shadow on the right. I'm also going to actually balance that out. Okay. Okay. Artist's choice of colors. I think I'm going to do blue. A turquoise type of color. I need to fill that up actually. Everybody is here. Next we got a flame design, graffiti letters that turn into flames. That'll be fun. And that on the hat as well. Something similar at least. The design they ordered has pink in it, so I'm going to add some pink too. I'm just going to put it on the outside. I'm gonna do my white highlights on this shirt and on that one, and then move on to this flame design. Fire. All right. Oops. Drip by Dar. This is some weird text. All one word. These two D's are capitalized, but the rest aren't. But all my letters are capital, so instead of making them a different shape, they're just going to be a little bigger, a little bolder, a little stronger drop shadow to them. It's going to make them stand out and look as important as a capital letter without necessarily being a capital letter in the traditional sense. Could have done a little bit better balancing out this design and making it a little more symmetrical. This is coming down a little lower than I want to. This is going up, so we have a rotational symmetry, but the flames on top, I can help add to that, and I can add some drips over here to even things out. Composition of your design as a whole is important, and I see a lot of times that being neglected, especially in the old school classic airbrush designs. You have these script type designs with a big capital letter at the beginning, and then it's just wonky. It's not balanced. Notice how all of our media is nowadays. Look at all of our logos and all of our graphic design. Everything is square. Everything is concisely shaped. If you have an Instagram icon or any kind of icon on a social media, it always is a square or a circle format. And the reason for that is it pretty much forces you into creating something symmetrical. We need to bring that to all of our design. That's like the fundamental of design itself, is symmetry and balance and composition. And it's something I see overlooked a lot. If your individual letters or aspects of your design can look great, if you don't put them in the right places or lay them out in a good way, there's just going to be something about it that seems off. Like that flame looks very off. This is not realistic fire. This is cartoon airbrush fire. No questions or chats in a while. I'm kind of concerned that it's not actually working. If I'm missing you guys, I apologize. And if you guys just aren't saying anything, that's fine too. Design is a little bit tedious with all these outlines. It's not that bad. That'll work. I want to check this chat one more time. I feel like it's not working. Oh, there it is. Thank you, thank you. At least I know chat is working now. This hat, we've got another flame design. Red, orange, okay, like a flame. I think they really just want a gradient here, and that would make more sense too. I don't want to get overspray on these shirts. I'm going to move them out the way a little bit. And some red. This fluorescent yellow, fluorescent colors like to help blend all the other colors in. So you lay them on top. And I'm going to let this dry for a minute before I paint the text on it. I don't want to paint the black text on top of very wet paint. I'm going to add a little bit of flame effect, or smoke, or whatever this is. I find I get too repetitive with my flames. They're always exactly the same shape. Again, I'm going to give that a minute, and I'm going to move on to this one. Good stuff, though. Thank you, Kevin. Off the radar. Radar is in red. It's the graffiti part. I got the same thing over here, but in purple. This is cool. This is like dripping text, like melting text. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on these as far as the shape of the letters, so that I can include some nice melting looking text. I'm going to put this A on top of the R. That'll work. Alright, now before I do the black outlines, I also want to add some of these strings of melted whatever this is. I'm going to do thicker drips and outline the drips themselves as part of the letter instead of a black drip hanging off of the outline, like I do when I'm trying to be fast. That'll work. I'm going to start with the bottom of the letters where all the complexity is, and then the tops are easier. This red that I layer on top of this is going to cover up a lot of this black. It's more of an opaque color, so these drips, shadows, won't be so black. And I'm not going to add any line weight to the bottom. I'm just going to leave it right off the on top in a print style. I'm going to clean this airbrush. It's giving me some weird shapes. It's probably all from tip dry. And a little bit of shadow between the letters, since this is more of a three-dimensional design than most. At least some shadowing is required. And I'm going to do the red now. And let it dry for the outline. Notice I'm angling my airbrush into the design. If I'm on the top, I'm angling it down. If I'm on the bottom, I'm angling it up. Right and left the same way. And that's so my overspray lands inside of the letters instead of outside all over the t-shirt or the hoodie. That's especially important on something like a hoodie because these bumps, these strings, these folds and wrinkles, this pocket, these will all collect the overspray. If I was just spraying straight down here, that overspray is going to plume out like an explosion and it's going to get caught on all of these little spots. So you want to make sure to minimize your overspray when you're painting on anything that's not perfectly flat, especially when you're painting on something that's not flat. Drop shadow on these. I need to do an outline as well. Kind of weird outlining these drips in the same color. I don't have, I mean, I always have a choice, but I'm doing it anyway. And as always, these white highlights will set everything off. Okay, let's do the text on this and then come back to the other two. Gives me a minute to sit down. Alright. Darla Flame. Okay. Purple and black on both of these. This is the same as that one. Nice work, ready by your hats. AutoCap.com. Glad to catch you live finally. I'm glad I inspired you, man. That's really cool. What kind of kit did you end up with? STORME. Front, right? I hope it's on the front. Are the Neos good for what you're doing? The Iwata Neos are pretty good. I have one of them. I tried it out. The Iwata Neos are the cheaper version of the Eclipse. They're like the Vega of a Badger. They are good. They're very nice. They're a little less. They're perfect for t-shirts. They're a little less precise than the Eclipses are, but they're completely adequate for painting t-shirts. Yeah, if you were gonna get an Iwata, I would actually recommend the Neos for painting shirts. The only reason I recommend Badger instead of Iwata is because of the price point. Badgers are just cheaper. Replacement parts are cheaper. Everything else is just, it's less expensive. And they're still a great quality airbrush. All of the work that you've seen on my channel has been done with Badgers. That said, I don't paint like motorcycle helmets and tanks and stuff like that. I paint high pressure on absorbent materials. So. It's always easier to paint on something absorbent. If you paint on a hard surface, again like a helmet or a motorcycle tank or even a canvas, that paint tends to splatter away instead of be sucked up by this nice absorbent t-shirt. So usually even when I'm painting on a canvas, I'll wrap that canvas in a cotton t-shirt, just a scrap shirt, and actually be painting on the shirt, not on the canvas itself. And I'll just staple the shirt in place and paint like that. Haven't ordered it yet. Looking at some Iwata again. Yeah, Iwata guns are good. Spin. Okay. Yes to a lot of those things. If you've been painting on cars for a long time, painting on t-shirts is going to be way easier. It is a lot different, but if you've been painting on cars, then you have excellent finger trigger control, I'm sure. What PSI are you working at? I'm working at 50 PSI right now. And I can go up, sometimes I paint as high as 70 or 80 PSI if I'm painting on a t-shirt. You would never dream of doing that on a car. Most of my paints, I use Createx paints. Createx or the Createx Wicked colors. Most of them I spray right out of the bottle. The opaque color is like the black and the white. And some of the other colors I'll reduce with Createx's 4011 reducer, about 10%, but pretty much as needed. But again, that air pressure plays a big role in how your paint's performing, and you have a lot of room to bump that up on a t-shirt. Shirts, hats, tumblers, etc. Shirts and hats are easy. Tumblers are going to be difficult. Not only are they round, but again, they're a hard, flat surface. So you have to paint at a much lower pressure. And you'll have to learn how to paint without having a bunch of splatter. The design spidering and splattering out. If you spray wet paint or wet water on a hard surface, it's going to splatter away. You don't want that to happen when you're painting. So you have to paint in a low enough pressure to avoid that. There's a guy, what's his name? I forget his actual name. Air, Oil, and Lead on Instagram. He's been painting cars for a very long time. He has a technique that actually has proven very useful for me. He paints with really thick paints on hard surfaces at a high pressure. Instead of thinning his paints, he paints with thick paint at high pressure, and that helps to prevent that spidering, that splattering. What am I doing? New Jersey, but I need to also put a crown. I'm putting the crown over here. I have a little travel kit. It's not really a travel kit as much as like a secondary airbrush kit. That's got some gravity-fed brushes in it and a bottle of every color paint that Spectratex makes. And when I use that kit for painting on hard surfaces and helmets and things like that, and I don't reduce that paint at all. I use the same technique he does there and keep it nice and thick and paint at high pressure. And building up layers and layers of paint. New Jersey. Jersey. I know how to spell it, but I have to say it in order to spell it right. Mike's brush airbrushing. Yeah, I've seen his videos too. He's good at it. He knows what he's doing. I haven't spoken to him, so I don't know anything about that second piece, but he's one of the more popular ones here on YouTube. I don't think he's put out anything very recently. I could be wrong. The videos of his that I did watch, I didn't like his script lettering. I don't want to talk bad about anybody. I don't want to talk bad about anybody. He knows what he's doing. He's making good tutorials. But there's some fundamentals of script lettering that he's missing that could be improved a little bit, in my humble opinion. There's a lot of good content on YouTube as far as how to airbrush and all that. My goal is to kind of bring that all into one channel in one place. Hopefully, with a new generation of video equipment, most of it's really old. All of James Rodriguez's work on YouTube is great. He was my inspiration when I started airbrushing. I learned a lot from his videos. I didn't realize that you could do script lettering in one pass until I saw him do it, and I was like, hey, that's possible. And then that's when I started doing that. I missed that, dude. Got to talk to him once or twice, and never again. Okay. I'm gonna do a actual shadowy looking shadow here. I really want to add pink to this, but when people say that they want purple, they don't mean they want purple and pink, I've noticed. He's good at shirts, but not cars. Yeah, he's never done cars. Oh, you were talking about Mike's brush. Yeah, Jamie Rodriguez was the dude back in the day. He actually worked with Badger not only sponsored by Badger, but he worked with Badger to help produce the Spectratex line of paints. Good old Ken Schlotfeld. I really want to add pink to this design. It would set it off. But I'm not gonna do it. He's been gone for what, like 6 years now? Longer than that, like 8 years, I think. Alright. That'll work. One more over here. That design, but in purple. Ouch. My head is pounding from this giant heavy camera attached to it. Radar. What would one charge for a t-shirt? Well, we have a variety of prices here. These graffiti designs, usually I charge about 35. 20, 15, you know, somewhere around 20 to 30 bucks usually. It depends on, obviously it depends on what it is you're painting and how long it takes to paint it. And those are just my prices. On Etsy, Etsy's a good place to look at what other people are charging for artistic services, just to see where you want to be. On Etsy, things start as low as like 10 bucks, which I think is just too little. And the problem with that is the quality of work is so terrible for the people that are charging $10 for their work that it makes people think less of airbrushing itself. If you think of airbrush shirts now, you think of the old school crappy t-shirts that you got at the beach that are spelled wrong and everything else and blurry and whatnot. That's not the case. That's just, it's sometimes the case, right? And that's not at all what I'm delivering. That's what most good airbrush artists aren't delivering crappy work. They're doing fantastic work. But when you want to just make a cheap t-shirt and sell it for 10 bucks, you're kind of making us all look bad. Don't do that. I don't know what that was. Not really happy with the way these drips are turning out. the melting aspect. I think I could do better on that. Do you also do portraits? No. I always say no immediately to that. I could. I have before. I used to. I haven't in years, right? And I stopped doing them because I was no good at figure drawing, and they took me a long time, and I would get frustrated with how long they were taking. So I was like, no, I'm not doing portraits anymore. But nowadays, probably it's been at least 4 years since I've done a portrait. Maybe I would be better at it. I don't know. I try to avoid doing really crazy custom orders, which sucks that I have to do that, but I don't have time to paint every order that comes in. I have to pick and choose stuff that's nice and simple. I would really like to be able to paint those crazy orders again, and it's the season for it now. Halloween's coming around the corner, and that's when everybody starts asking for everything, crazy stuff. So this year I'm going to try to take advantage of some of that and just paint some fun stuff and make videos of it and stream it or whatever. Because it's a lot more enjoyable to paint that kind of thing when you have someone you're painting with. And though I don't have anybody physically here with me to watch me paint, streaming about it is kind of cool. So I'll do that. Some white highlights and then I'll be done. And then I'm going to hop off this stream. If you guys got any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But it'll be only a couple more minutes before I turn this off for the day. It's proving to be very difficult to paint with this thing on my head, to be honest with you. Kind of playing cameraman while I'm painting, making sure my head's facing a good direction. Irrelevant. All right. That's about it for these. What's up? Did you use anyone to design my website? No, I built my website myself. I've built my website many times actually. Before Shopify and Etsy were a thing, I'd coded that thing from scratch. Any tips for starting with graffiti? Graffiti or graffiti airbrushes? Graffiti letters, there's a lot of better tutorials on how to do graffiti letters than I have out there yet. I have some videos that you can look at on how to lay things out and space things. When you're doing graffiti, the most fundamental things I can tell you is, you've seen me do it a couple times, do a simple stroke for each letter, figure out the spacing, and then go back and add your outlines to it. Don't do your outlines in black immediately like I do it. You saw me do it on that red shirt where I did the same background color as the letters themselves. I sketched out and tried to get a consistent thickness of each stroke on my letter. Notice they're not very consistent, but you don't want real thin letters and real thick parts of letters. Try to get a consistent stroke everywhere. Lay everything out first and play with it a whole bunch. You want to use pen and paper or pencil and paper and sketch and sketch and sketch and figure out your style and then do your thing. But just watch people's graffiti, do your own graffiti. It's going to come to you. I have the GoPro chest strap. Problem with the chest strap is, when the chest strap is right here and I'm airbrushing right in front of me, then like all you can see is the back of my hands. You don't get to see me painting, and it's really hard to see what's going on. So it needs to be up there. It preferably would be like right here, so you can see to the side and not so high. And I have a couple mounts that do that, but they're all big and clunky. I've been trying to get a good situation. Just started painting t-shirts. I normally do hard surfaces. Glad I found your videos. Yeah, t-shirts are a lot easier. You'll like t-shirts if you have been painting hard surfaces. A future video I'm going to make, I bought this. Hopefully this camera's pointing in the good direction.